Good morning, everybody. We'll just be getting started in a moment. Okay, good morning, everybody. I know there's just waiting for a few more of us to join. For those of you who joined us so far, just to say thank you very much for joining us to this session this morning, where we're talking about supporting your professional members at every stage of their career. So just to go through some of the boring, the webinar etiquette, just saying that this session is being recorded and the session will be available on demand after. The Q&A box is for putting in any questions that you have for Alastair or in general. We do want this to be as interactive as possible, so please do put in your questions. If we don't get to cover them all, we will definitely follow up afterwards to make sure they are answered. So please put them in and we will be covering those after we have had our chat with Alastair. There is a chat box also, so this is more for any sort of technical or support questions that you have, and my colleague Rebecca is in the background and she'll be keeping an eye on that. And also sort of talking around some technical things. I know Alastair had been having a few issues with Wi-Fi this morning, which, as we all know, working in the world of virtual, but hopefully that seems to have sorted itself out, but we'll be keeping an eye on that throughout. And then just finally, just making sure that your microphone is on mute. So delighted to say that we have Alastair with us this morning, but firstly, I'm Joyce Harman. I'm one of the consultants at Heart Square. And Alastair, if you could just quickly say hello.
Morning, everyone. I'm Alastair McCapra. I'm Chief Executive for the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, and I've worked with Heart Square on and off for the last couple of years.
Fantastic, thanks, Alastair. So don't worry, I'm not going to read this slide. Really, just for those of you who are not aware of Heart Square, just to say that we are an independent consultancy practice and that we only work in the non-profit sector. So I'm going to just quickly, to get us started, put up a quick poll, if you could bear with me. Just to give us an idea of with people with us this morning and sort of where you are. So really, if you could answer this, we'd be very grateful. So the question is looking at, do you believe you have a digital learning or development strategy that's going to engage your members? So have you got something in place? You don't know, you're thinking about it, you're developing one. So I'm just going to let that run just for another second or two. Interesting, quite a few people on were developing one, so that's quite good. So let me just now end that polling and I will share the results. So yeah, definitely the predominant one is we're developing one, so that's really good. And so I'm sure the people joining will be very interested, Alastair, to hear about the work that you've been doing. Good to know this. There's no don't knows, which is always very good. So and an equally split between sort of a yes and no, but majority of people, I would say, on the session this morning are planning on developing one or are in the middle of developing one. So that's quite interesting. So if I stop sharing that. So when we were thinking about this topic and this content and talking to my colleagues and clients alike that we work with, looking at, understanding, why do people join membership bodies? Now, this is by no means a definitive list. It's just sort of some of the main things that came up. So it can be for many reasons, depending on the profession that you're in. It can be a requirement for that profession. For some people, it was around some legal advice and guidance that is given by the professional body. A big one, a very obvious one, is is networking, interacting with colleagues and peers within their chosen specialisation. For continuous professional development, very key and obviously a key point of what we're looking at today. But a big part was really, from the conversations I was having, was around help and guidance from experts to help people learn more and to develop their skills, and really seeing membership bodies and professional membership bodies as being the go-to place for that guidance, seeing you guys as the experts that they can learn from. So as I say, by no means all of the parts of why people join membership bodies, but certainly ones that we see coming up as sort of general themes across the organisations that we work with. So when talking about sort of our topic for today and looking at supporting members through their career development, through their journey, a number of the challenges that come up is firstly around delivering quality content and support. So obviously all of you guys you're delivering content, you're delivering various different types of content to your members, but I suppose the important point there is quality. So things like, even from a basic level, your websites, you can have an awful lot of content on there, but how up to date is it? What is your ability to react to things that might be happening, particularly around the sector that you are in? How up to date is it? How personalized is it? So that is often a big challenge. Also, from the support side of things, again, depending on the type of organization that you are, when members reach out and have challenges or issues, how are you supporting them? How are you responding to them? What are the timeframes around that? How interactive is it? Or more importantly, how difficult is it for them to contact you and to have those engagements? Within departments, different departments, either looking at examinations or accreditations, or from a regulatory body point of view, there can be a number of different systems in place, a number of different tools that are being used, a number of different types of data that's required. And so it's about bringing that all together, because members are demanding a much more personalized and digital and streamlined service these days. And so, bringing that all together can often be a challenge. Data, as I know, I will talk about data all day long. There is an awful lot of data, you will have an awful lot of data, but it's understanding that the data that you have, especially if it is siloed in different systems, understanding what data that you have and what is the best way to utilize that data. One of the other big challenges is around the move towards more on-demand learning. I mean, certainly the pandemic has accelerated this an awful lot more than it had been before, but the move away from paper-based and desk-based training, development, examinations, accreditations, to more on-demand online versions of that. And then also looking at offering your membership, not just being a basic membership that is kind of a tick box to say we all remember and we get some newsletters and things like that. That is actually career learning, that you're taking them along that career journey, whatever that journey might be around your specific members. So these are some of the challenges that we have seen when talking to organizations. So some key considerations around this really is, the first one, which is kind of an obvious one, is around systems. So, very often with a lot of the organizations, as I said before, data can be siloed. You can have a number of different systems in place. And it can particularly be for a challenge for, education-based organizations, because there can be an awful lot of different specializations within that organization, that sector. So very much looking at what are the different systems and tools that you have in place. Are they integrated? Can they be joined up? Can you really truly see the different interaction points that your members are having with you? So, looking at how can you bring that all together to make the member experience better, but also really making life a bit easier for your staff, the people that are, trying, doing their day job, trying to offer this service to their members, to make it as easy for them to be able to, review what it is that the members wants and the members needs. Then on the data side of things, as I said before, in any of the other webinars or training programs that we've run, I could talk about data all day long, but it's about recognizing that this is one of your most important strategic assets. It is the foundation of the relationship that you have with your members and your stakeholders. There is such a wealth of information about how people are interacting with you. What stage are they at in their career? What type of learning do they want? What type of learning are they currently engaging with you with? What type of documents are they downloading? What are they reading? All of this kind of thing. So recognizing the data and very much how you can best utilize that. And then obviously your members. and one of the things I'm going to expand on in a bit more detail is around the member journey. And this is really a good, it's a tangible exercise. You know, don't get me wrong, there's work to be done on it. It's not a quick and easy, but it's a good place to start to understand what stage are your members at their careers? What is their their career journey? And how do your services and your products, how are they tailored to that? How do they meet those objectives? And actually, my colleague, our MD, Rob DeBell, has written a very interesting article around member journey. So we will send a link to that afterwards because there's some useful information in there. So kind of taking this out into three sort of further stages, defining the career stages that your members are going to follow, looking at what the members want from you at each stage of the career, but equally, what do you want from them? Can you offer them at those different stages of the career? And then validating your assumptions, utilizing the data, and speak to your members, ask them at the end of the day. There's no point in trying to validate assumptions if you don't actually ask the people that it concerns. So expanding it further when we're talking about defining the career stages. So for example, that there is lots of different types. It depends on the type of organization that you are. But as an example here, the career stages could be going from a student to a graduate to newly qualified to then being certified and then being experienced. And really as a membership organization, what you want to do is get people on board right from that stage one, them being a student, right through all the different stages to being an experienced professional, and making sure that you have offerings around all of those different stages. So the first step is identify what are those different career stages that are relevant to your membership. Then looking at the needs. So from the member's point of view, thinking about those if it's those 5 different stages in the example, looking at what do the students want. Students generally at that stage in their career, they're looking for knowledge. They're looking for knowledge, they're looking for learning. The newly qualified professionals, they're looking to build their networks, expand their network further within that sector. The certified professionals could be looking to build on their experience, taking that forward, continuing on with that. And then obviously the experienced professionals, what do they want? Maybe perhaps it's about building their profile within the sector, sort of more kudos, more knowledge within. Now that's not to say that, once you get to an experienced professional, you don't care about building your network or getting more experience or knowledge. You obviously still want all of those, but it's taking a step back to think, breaking it down into the different stages and what in reality do the people want at those different stages. Then from your point of view, because it's not all a sort of a one-way street, thinking about what you want from your members. So, you want a student to follow the profession and join the representative body, your body, very early on in their career. For the newly qualified professionals, you want them to go on and seek further certification, training, and you want them to do it with you. From the certified professionals, you want them to stay with you throughout their career to explore and develop their specializations. And then for the experienced professionals, you're looking to get for them to be contributing back to the industry, to their professional body, to your body, so that it's very much, it is a journey. This whole part is a journey that, you should be interacting with people at all stages, so that the experienced professionals again are helping in thinking about sort of at that student stage again. On validating your assumptions, some things but that are quite obvious. So reviewing your data, looking at your data, understanding your data, understanding what data you actually have, where it lives, how you can best utilize it. Looking at how your members are actually interacting with you, what is the most common ways that they interact with you. One of the questions that often doesn't get asked is if people suspend their membership or they leave their membership, why? Why was the reason that they moved? Was it cost? Was it that they felt they weren't getting the support or the information that they needed, or that they've moved on to a similar but different membership body? And then really importantly, asking them for feedback. Speak to your members. They're the people at the end of the day who can only really tell you what it is that they need. Then once you've identified what those different stages are, sort of the 5 examples that I put before. So reviewing your offering. So looking at those identified stages and saying, okay, how is our offering positioned for those 5 different stages? Do we have an offering for those 5 different stages? Actually, do we have an awful lot of stuff for certified professionals, but we really don't have very much for students, or vice versa? So what have you got for all of those different stages so that there isn't any gaps? How's your offering tailored to your primary audience? Is it delivering what it should be? Is there any gaps that that you can identify? And also, how is it spread across the member groups, to making sure that you're covering everybody? And then also, really importantly, you as an organization, what is your primary objective? What is your strategy that you're working towards as an organization? And how does that offering stack up against that? And then looking at the individual groups, but then, really overall. And then finally, just sort of talking about some of the things, that we see. There's an awful lot of use of automated intelligence, chatbots, automation, individualized learning. We're seeing an awful lot of that across the sector. There's a lot of competition from, I suppose, what we'd say non-traditional training and education bodies, some other low-cost training providers out there, a lot more of sort of free community sites that have cropped up over the last couple of years. And I suppose the really important point is that students and members have evolved into a much more modern and digital consumer. And there's an awful lot of other choices of where to go and get information, and often it can be for free. So I suppose in summing up is saying that, if you're not offering a personalized, a streamlined service, there are other bodies that will. So just taking that time to understand your members, where they are in their careers, on what you can do to make sure that your offerings really, I suppose, stack up, for want of a better word. So enough from me, because I know all of you want to hear from Alastair. So Alastair, thanks again for joining us this morning. So could you just tell us a little bit, about CIPR, just to sort of put a bit of context around?
Sure. Okay. Hello again, everyone. The Chartered Institute of Public Relations was founded in 1948. Some of you may have seen the kinds of public education film that were produced during the Second World War, with telling you how to have a bath in, and the putting out that kind of public information content. And then straight after the war project, which was the...
Sorry, Alastair, I was going to say you're breaking up quite badly. It's not that I don't want to see. I was just going to, maybe if we turn off your camera just for a minute or two, just to see if that would make any difference. Apologies.
Sure. Okay. And I was saying we were founded in 1948. We were founded by a group of civil servants who had previously worked in the Ministry of Information. They had they started off producing public information films during the war. In 1948, they moved on to producing public information as the NHS by many of the people who are responsible for it. And so those were our roots. We've been going since 1948. We currently have about 9,500 members. Most of those are in Britain, but we do have members in about 130 countries around the world. And we have been working to, since 1948, of the professional standing of people who work in public relations.
Perfect, thanks, Alastair. Yeah, you're breaking up quite a bit, but let's keep going, and hopefully it'll improve. So looking at understanding a bit about sort of your vision and goals, for the organisation, and I suppose particularly thinking around education and learning, and if you wanted to touch on that.
Well, education and learning is really absolutely at the heart of what we do, and I've described CIPR members as a community of people committed to their own self-development. Public relations is quite a large sector. There are probably about 80,000 people working in some kind of role who describe themselves as being in public relations or in something related. We only have 9,500 members. So we're not a statutory to differentiate themselves from the great mass of their colleagues. And one of the key differentiators is they really want to commit to being the best they possibly can. And that involves engaging with a network of people who are through formal and informal learning. And so our vision is twofold. As it's set out in our charter, our purpose, the public has access to public relations professionals who have the highest standard of professional endeavour, knowledge and skill. And then, so our job is to make sure that they get to that point. And the other side of our purpose is to ensure that the public understands what those people do. But making sure that our people are able to deliver the best possible standard of work to their clients and to society.
Perfect, thanks, Alastair.
In general is.
Thanks, Alastair. We do have a bit of a lag, but we will we'll keep going and see how we go. So moving on then, I suppose, what would you say how important is education in your offering to your members? Including as a proportion of your your revenue, and do you charge separately for some of your educational offering, or is that included in the membership?
The answer to that is quite messy because a lot of the learning in the CIPR takes place formally or semi-informally, and all of those are either free to members or available at absolute. They're very marginal.
Yeah, Alastair, I'm sorry, we're having really
our training.
As I say, Alastair, sorry, I don't know if you can hear me. We're having an awful lot of problems hearing you. You're breaking up totally. I don't know if we want to. Let me see, what else can we try? I don't know if Alastair, if maybe do you want to log out and log back in and see if that helps. Apologies everybody, as you know, all the great fun of doing
I'll do that.
Live events. Yeah, if you try that, Alastair, and then we can see if that's any better. Just to say, while Alastair is doing that, so what we will do, we will obviously give this another try, and hopefully Alastair will be able to join us and be able to hear properly. If not, what we will do is we will make sure that all the questions that we were going to cover today, that we will cover all of those off with Alastair, and we will get those out to everybody, and possibly we will record another version of this so that everybody has the information. But while we're just waiting for Alastair to rejoin, it'd be really useful. I know that there has been some questions coming in. If there are any particular questions that you do want to ask Alastair, please do put them in, and we will make sure that we get those covered. Let me see. So Alastair, okay. Let's see how you're getting on, Alastair.
All right, I'll put my camera back off again, and
let's see if that makes a difference.
We'll carry on if that's okay. You were asking me a question
on your the education offering
about
as a proportion of your your revenue, and you were saying it's quite complicated.
And so a lot of the learning that takes place in the CIPR is informal or semi-formal. So it's webinars like this, which are either free to members or at a very nominal price. So they don't really count. You know, they're pretty marginal for the CIPR as a business. The big ticket items that we have are our formal training, and that traditionally was a full day face-to-face in London. And that accounted for about a third of our income overall. And that obviously took a big knock last year. We moved the entire offer online using just Zoom. And we've kept it going, and you know, we have begun slowly and moved back to face-to-face, but that's about a third of our income. That I should say is not free to members, it's discounted to members, but the majority of people who attend those courses are not our members. So it's about 45% of delegates are members, and the remainder are other people in the sector, but they're not CIPR members. The last thing to mention is qualifications. We offer certificate and diploma qualifications through a network of teaching centres around the world. Taken together with training qualifications together account for about half of all of our revenue. And that is not part of the offer for CIPR members. There are no discounts because it's delivered through commercial teaching centres. So it's a standard price whether you're a member or not. And again, most of the people doing that are in fact not CIPR members. So there's a bit of the reason why it's complicated is because the CIPR as a business makes much of its revenue from non-members who are taking our training qualifications. Whereas if you are a member, you have access to a lot more free or nearly free informal learning.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. And I suppose you've kind of touched on it already, but is there any sort of other elements around so the short courses or qualifications or CPD offerings that you do around sort of the learning and education element of your offer?
Yeah, so we very strongly encourage people to undertake CPD, and that's a big long-term drive for us. Again, because we're not a statutory regulator, we can't compel people to join, we can't compel people to do CPD. It's I would say a relatively unfamiliar concept in our sector, so we're pushing away steadily at it. This year, for the first time, we will get 1/3 of our members doing CPD. But that's a matter of continuous campaigning to get that up. I mean, ideally, obviously, we want it to be 100% in the end, but that's going to be quite a long haul. Our kind of attitude towards CPD is that any learning that you undertake, whether that's formal or informal, structured, personal, qualifications, whatever it might be, anything that contributes towards our charter objective of ensuring that the public has the best possible, that the professionals have the best possible skills, understanding, and ability, all that counts. So we don't say that it has to be only courses and things that we offer. We offer plenty of things. But when our groups, for example, run webinars like this one, all of them get loaded up, the links go up onto a platform, so you can access all of them. We direct people towards third-party and external links. We, of course, provide professional guidance documents and other things throughout the year. So you can assemble your required number of points from a mixture of things provided by the CIPR, provided by others, personal reading, and other things. And we also give points for giving back. I mean, you mentioned in your opening remarks that more senior people of the reward of membership for them is the pleasure experience and helping others to develop. So you can get CPD points in the CIPR for supporting the learning of others as well as for developing your own learning.
Okay, that's really interesting. That's a really good point, and I think also your point as well about sharing information that is not just the CIPRs, that at the end of the day you guys know what your members needs, and that information can come from a number of different places, but the fact that you're utilizing all of that and making it available, I think is a really, really good point. So what would you sort of say are who are your sort of competitors or sort of peers, and what would you say are the main sort of points of differentiation?
There are nobody else provides formal certificate and diploma qualifications in public relations in the UK. There are providers in the United States and elsewhere, but they're not really competitors. We're certainly the largest in the world, but that sounds very grand. It's actually a relatively small market. I mean, the market for professional qualifications in public relations is small. In the UK, it's in the hundreds of people each year. So it's a little bit of a cottage industry. And that's probably why there isn't more competition, because it's just not the space that it's really worth other players entering.
Yeah.
In terms of training, the training is offered by the Public Relations and Communications Association, which is our sort of rival body, if you like. Their origins were as a trade association, and they later on moved into the individual membership space. They offer, approximately similar training to us. They have a slightly lower volume of business. And I would say the main differentiator is they're less rigorous on their quality control. I mean, we're quite ruthless with our trainers. We have, constant delegate feedback forms and, requirements that they keep up to date and get very high ratings from their delegates. Otherwise, we move them on. So I think what people are getting from us, as you mentioned, there's plenty of stuff for free out there. And I mean, there's no point in trying to compete with that. There's plenty of cheap and cheerful stuff. Yeah. What people get from us, especially since it's often paid for by their employer, they can go to their employer and say, I need this training. I'm going to go and get it from the CIPR. It's not some freebie, which I've just found myself by Googling in 2 seconds. So that gives the employer the assurance that this is something worth investing a bit of money in. So that's the kind of differentiation on the training qualifications. As far as more general learning is concerned, we're just kind of down in the mosh pit with everybody else. There's all kinds of stuff, and sometimes people will say, "Oh, I've just come. Have you seen this? Book that's just come out? It's really important." So then we'll allocate points to that. We'll add it to the ladder. We encourage people to share those kind of things, but we also allow people to customize their CPD because everybody's different. They have different personal needs. They encounter different things in the context of their work. So if somebody's done something that's really important to them, let's say in Public Health Wales, I mean, it may not be of huge interest to many other members, but if they've done it and it's helped them in their learning goals, then they can collect points on that and leave us a statement on why they did it and what they've learned from it.
That's really good, and I think that a lot of the points you've touched on there, it's about the quality, but that personalization. Everybody's different and what they need, and having the flexibility to do that, it's a really good thing that I think a lot of the organizations joining us today will that's a really, really useful point to make. Where would you describe sort of where you are in terms of your your digital journey, your maturity around that, and what are sort of some of the key initiatives on your digital roadmap around learning and education?
Well, I think the stage we're at is of having just integrated all of our learning offer in with everything else. Until a couple of years ago, we ran all of our training on Eventbrite. They were just separate sessions. People signed up to them. So all the data about that was held separately. The data on their sort of feedback about the trainers was collected on paper. All that kind of stuff was just, that was in one place. The information on candidates taking our certificate and diploma qualifications was held primarily in the teaching centres. We only hold minimal information about that, primarily about what particular modules they've completed and whether they've met the requirements. We don't hold a huge amount of information apart from that. We used to have, until 2 years ago, a separate CPD platform, which was custom built and which we had neglected for north of a decade. So it was not in great technical shape. It was a major security risk in terms of cybersecurity, because in order to keep it running, we had to run it on servers that just didn't have the standard protections. So we had, there were good institutional reasons for getting ourselves off that, but we couldn't. It was not easy to relate the information which was the fact that this person had completed the CPD requirements for that year, and we ticked a box on the main database, but that's all we really had. So since we moved over to our new system a couple of years ago, all of that is in one place. We run all of our training on the events module of the main database, so we can easily relate, who's a member, who's not a member, what else have they done, all that stuff is just much more discoverable, much more easily. And in terms of CPD, that's also all now integrated onto the main platform. So you don't, for example, have to go off onto a different website in order to record your points. We are, in the new year, we'll be launching an app for our members, which will allow them to track and update their CPD from their mobile phones. So, we're making progress towards integration with the view to what you mentioned in your introduction about having a single view of the customer. Because previously, we'd have somebody recording their CPD in one database, undertaking training on Eventbrite, possibly having done a qualification somewhere that would be held in a completely different place, and we, who might or might not be a member, and there just wasn't any way of seeing what that person was doing, and therefore of sending them appropriate messages, and encouraging them to do, pointing them towards the next set of resources, or giving them things that were appropriate to their level or career stage. So I think we've made some important steps forward in the last couple of years in pulling all of that together and allowing ourselves for the first time to really start personalizing our communication with them. So what they're getting from us isn't broadcast about do CPD, do CPD. It's like, we see you've done this, here's something you may also be interested in. And, don't forget there's also that. So that's been helpful. I suppose that the next stage for us is really, we've got to make a kind of an investment decision about whether we want to actually go full scale on an e-learning platform. And I'm a bit skeptical about this myself, for the reason I touched on earlier, which is to do with scale. I mean, we have a third of our members doing CPD, so that's approaching 3,000. We have a few hundred people a year doing our qualifications, and we have about 2,000 doing our training. We could invest a gigantic amount of money in an e-learning platform, and also that the costs of delivering your content on those platforms is high. It's not like just sticking it out on Zoom. You've got to do a lot of work, and I'm a little bit unsure whether, I mean, the reason for doing that for me would not be to improve the service to our current customer base, because I think actually on the whole they're fine. I mean, I'm sure they'd love a swanky new platform, but we have something that's fit for purpose. The only reason for investing in that kind of e-learning platform for me would be if we were confident that we could pretty safely grow our markets, so particularly internationally. So if we could put all of our CPD onto an e-learning platform, and then say to sister associations in Kenya, India, Malaysia, look, we've got this platform, we've got all these resources, we'll add your resources onto it, we'll give your members access to it, and expand the world, that way, then I think it would be worth doing. But if it's just a matter of, well, we might get, 550 people rather than 475 people doing a diploma, it just feels to me like an overinvestment in something. And people have been talking about this for a long time. I mean, when I first came into my post 8 years ago, the first project I killed was actually for an e-learning platform, because the word was that everybody wanted on demand, everybody wanted online, and actually all of our customer data told us the opposite. They, some people moaned about, oh, we have to come into London, but actually they liked coming into London. They had a day out of work, they got a day out of the office, they got to meet other people, so they might not find that the most convenient thing in the world, but they actually enjoyed. I mean, and for public relations, the human touch and the context is really important. It's not a highly technical profession, so you can't just digest lots and lots of facts about things. So when you go into one of our training sessions, the trainer will talk about an idea or an approach, and then it's really important to have a room full of people, some from agencies, some working in-house, public sector, private sector, talking about what situations arise in their work and how they would apply that, or how it may not be a perfect fit for them. That's how, it's that kind of wider contextual thinking that really matters. That's quite hard to deliver for us online, even if you've got a very technically slick product. And the other thing is, of course, the experience of the last last 2 years,
Yeah.
is that we moved everything over to digital. Did our numbers grow? No, they didn't. And fair enough, people were under pressure for all kinds of reasons, but the proposition that's been going around for years and years that people want everything online, they want it on demand. I think in our case that's questionable. There are people who want that. Whether there's enough of those people to really make an investment worthwhile is an open question for us. So in the second part of this year, we want to do some kind of investigation and research to determine whether, in fact, investing in an e-learning platform is the right thing for us to do.
Yeah, and I think, I completely agree with everything you've just said, because it covers the point. One of the things is it's talking to your membership, understanding what they need, because as you say, one thing doesn't fit all. Absolutely, it has to be tailored to the needs of your members, and I suppose that kind of comes sort of my next question, which you've kind of touched on already, is obviously over the last 2 years everything's had to be virtual, but it is there, knowing that, as you say, that human touch, that human element, which is really, really important to your membership. How do you sort of see going forward in the future of how you're going to deliver sort of courses and training? Do you think it'll be much more a hybrid approach, or you'd ideally like to see get back to that much it is all face-to-face? Sort of what sort of your thinking on that? Obviously, we all don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, but in an ideal world, what sort of your thinking around that?
Well, we're in the position now where we can deliver it either way, and so in a sense we're kind of neutral as to whether it should be face-to-face or whether it should be online. That just depends on what the market wants. Yeah. So obviously people have been for the previous decade, people were saying, oh, why do we have to go into London? Why isn't it all online? And then for the last 2 years, people have been saying, oh, we've got Zoom fatigue. We really want to go back to going to face-to-face.
Yeah.
But again, people say one thing, and then what they actually do, may or may not be what they thought they were going to do. So every time we've asked people in the last 2 years, they say, oh, yes, face-to-face. We can't wait to get back face-to-face. And they will actually book themselves up for face-to-face sessions, and it all looks great. And then guess what happens in the last week? They all pull out. Yeah. So it's people obviously feel that they would like to go back to face-to-face, but when it comes to it, a lot of people just don't have the confidence or whatever. So as I say, we're kind of agnostic on that question. We could go back 100% face-to-face if that's what the market wants. We can continue to deliver 100% virtual if that's what the market wants, or any mix. We will keep offering both and seeing which gets the most pickup. It may be that it will settle around 70% face-to-face, 30% virtual. The live sessions are certainly much more popular. I mean, we do pre-recorded sessions, but they're much less popular than the live ones. Yeah. I mean, I think that, so the question for us isn't so much whether it should be face-to-face or live, it's how far is Zoom or WebEx really adequate as a learning experience. And I suppose to go back to that question about the e-learning platform, if we have a significant and long-term demand for virtual delivery of learning, eventually the time will come when people say, look, you've been on Zoom now for 5 or 6 years. I mean, it's pretty rubbish. You can't do the things that other people can do in their learning environments. This isn't good enough anymore. So we may in the end be kind of driven towards investing in an e-learning platform for those reasons. Yeah,
that makes sense. And then sort of moving on, sort of looking at sort of pain points or challenges, in relation to sort of what you're doing around education. Is there something that's sort of coming up as the main problem that needs solving that you're sort of dealing with?
Yes, and it's not really to do with technology. It's more to do with content. It's to do with you touched on it earlier. The needs to make sure that everything is up to date and relevant. And I mean that sounds really kind of obvious, but we depend a lot on our members to create content for us. So we're not particularly like a traditional professional body that might have a technical department and researchers and people putting together sort of authoritative guides on this, that, or the other. I mean, what tends to happen in the CIPR is that 2 or 3 members will come to us and say, look, we think there's a need for some, updated guidance on this. And we say, great, off you go and write it. and then we, maybe give them a support of some editorial support. We get it peer reviewed, and then we publish it. And then if nobody feels like updating that for another 4 or 5 years, well, it doesn't get updated. And of course, that's just not, that's not really adequate for our strategic objectives. So we are working towards a more structured way of bringing things on board, moving them off, getting them updated and replaced. But because members work in so many different contexts and have so many different varying needs, keeping up with all of that is quite a challenge. So I would think that's the biggest one for us. It's just making sure that we've got stuff that is relevant and up to date and serves members' interests, and doing that in a systematic and reliable way. And the second thing is to do with the needs of senior members, because it's usually easier to provide for the needs of members at the earlier stage of their career, because you kind of know what they don't know, and it's easier to package that up. At more senior levels, people don't really, certainly in our world, people don't really want formal qualifications. They've got what they need. What they really want is face time with other senior professionals and senior people outside the profession, to talk about, current business issues or, whatever it may be. So again, that sounds quite obvious, and it's, quite easy to provide, but it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to kind of package up, and to, it's difficult for us because it's quite intangible to put our finger on exactly what it is that will attract people and keep them interested, and make them think their membership is worthwhile. And that's something that we've, I think we've kind of neglected really over the years. We've been so focused on the commercial elements, like what's going to drive the revenue, which is, a new certificate program or new face-to-face training that meets the needs of people at the junior end. We've been so focused on the revenue generation that we've kind of neglected some of our more senior practitioners.
No, thank you. That's really useful, and I think it comes to that point about making sure you've got something for all the different elements, all the different stages. And then sort of final question for me before I go, Bob, we have had some questions come in for you. I suppose you've kind of already touched on this a bit, but would you sort of like to make a sort of a comment, or sort of how you see education changing over sort of the next few years?
It's only going to grow in importance. And again, we're unlike many other professions, because many other professions have high requirements of knowledge and skill for entry. So if you want to be an architect, you have to train for 7 years before you can, you can qualify. Public relations is pretty much open. I mean, the majority of people who work in public relations don't have a degree in public relations. They may have degrees in politics or economics or sciences or all kinds of other things. They may come into it as recent graduates. They may come in as a second career or a third career. They may come in, having worked in journalism in their 30s, sometimes their 40s. So personalization is really important to us, because there are really no two members who are the same, and we don't have the comfort, if you like, of those well described pathways of first you do this and then you do that. So we're kind of the opposite of the accounting profession, if you like. Yeah. So that puts a big burden on the individual. There isn't a kind of a set of easy descriptions about what you should do next. You've really got to think about, where am I, where do I want to go next, and what do I need? So that kind of reflective self-development is really important to us. That's what we work really hard to cultivate. But I would say that the in general, when times to push learning and development a bit, to the back, because they're more, there's plenty of work out there, and they're more interested in bringing the work in. Everybody in the last 2 years has been called on to do things they've never done before, and so everyone is out of their comfort zone, and there is a scramble for training. I mean, organizations are struggling to recruit people. And so they're for the first time, in public relations in the agency world, it's really normal to say, well, if we've got this big new contract, or we've got whatever it is, we'll buy somebody in to do it. Now you can't buy them in, Yeah. And so people are looking at who they've already got and saying, okay, we need someone in this team to be able to do these kinds of things. So we're going to have to train them up. And people who've, let's say you ran a small agency that specialized in education, or specialised in air are finding themselves saying yes to work, which 3 years ago they'd have said no to. But that's pushing them into unfamiliar space. And that's really great, actually, for stimulating their thinking, oh, I don't know anything about this. I've really got to go off and find out about it. So now would be a good time to join a professional body, get into those networks, do all that informal learning, and maybe just possibly, get chartered or, do a diploma. So all of that kind of the stuff that produces uncertainty in the jobs market and in the economy generally produces good results, I think, for an organization that's saying to people, come on, focus, think about your future, and tell us what you need so that we can help equip you for that. So I think it's just going to get more and more important.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And I mean, so many, oh God, I could talk all day long, so many great points to unpick there, but I think definitely the one as well around the second and third careers, that's a really, really valid point, because like we all know, it's not like the old days where you went into one career and you stayed in it forever,
That's right.
People do move around, and yeah, the need for training because, as you say, the resources aren't out there, so you have to do it internally and have to train people up. Absolutely, completely agree with all of that. So just going to move to some of the questions that we had coming in. So one of the first ones that came in was saying, are you finding that members are expecting more in return for their fees? And if so, what kind of requests, suggestions are your members asking for? So are they getting a bit more demanding for their money?
I'm not sure I'd put it that way. The main response, honestly, we've had for the last couple of years was gratitude. I mean, I suppose most people members can be quite moany, but I mean, when the push came to shove, they were very, very glad that they were members, and they said so quite fulsomely. So the message we got wasn't, oh, you're letting us down, and you're a time of crisis, you're not giving us what we need. On the contrary, it was like, oh, we hadn't really appreciated before how much is on offer, and there's all these benefits of membership that we kind of forgotten about and never used before. The main new benefit that we brought in this year was a virtual career centre, and that went down really well. Okay. So helping people to prepare for job interviews, write their CVs, and those sorts of things, just basically get them as ready as possible for the jobs market. That was the most welcome new benefit.
Yeah, God, that sounds fantastic. Then one of the other questions was around, so communication can often be one way with emails, comms being pushed out from the membership body to members. So have you got any advice on how to promote two-way communication so members communicate back and stay actively engaged with their membership body?
I think that's going to be one of my long and complicated answers. Yes, that's one of the reasons why we're adopting an app, because everyone's sick of emails, and we get, depending on the email, our emails get about 35 to 40% openings. Some of the emails from our groups get lower than that, and people simultaneously say, we don't know what's going on, nobody ever tells us anything, and will you stop sending me 20 emails a week? So I just don't think there's an email way out of that. I think it's a mixture of personalizing and tailoring things so that when you do send them something, it's not a broadcast about here's a massive load of stuff. They will read it because they know that it's largely going to be relevant to them. And also the second reason for going to the main reason for going to the app is it will free us up from email. We can rely more on push notifications, and also that a lot of stuff doesn't have to be mediated through us at the moment. If the East Anglia group wants to send an email to everybody in East Anglia, they upload the content onto a central platform and we send it out. But then there's no way for I mean, they can, an individual member in East Anglia can email their, somebody on that committee, but it's to an app. It will be possible for any member to contact any other member, have just ordinary conversations, not necessarily through us or about us or even about CIPR things. They can talk about whatever they like, really. So we think having an app is an important step forward in sort of community building, in that it will allow disintermediated communication for the first time. And one of our objectives for the coming year is to really cut back on email and to make much more use of push notifications.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And then one of the, we've got lots of questions. We'll be able to cover them all off. But one of the ones that's come in that I think would be good to cover off is we need to review our member education offering. Where should we start? And have you got any top tips on how best to do this? So obviously, I know that can be a very long answer, but I suppose from your point, Alastair, when we've been looking at all of this, you know, what would you sort of say that this first sort of fundamentals of where to start thinking?
Yeah. The only general thing I would say is don't jump to solutions too quickly, because in membership organizations there are always people who are convinced that, you know, we must do a certificate in this, we must change this, we must change that, or we must deliver it this way or that way. And those things are possible outcomes, but everybody likes to land on their pet project for those things. And it's actually, it's a much harder thing to establish what do people actually need. And then figure out the best way of delivering that. So I would that's a really tough question to answer, actually. But I would just say don't get bulldozed into what looks like easy solutions too quickly, because you'll just end up running in 55 different directions. And I mean, I just, you know, I know of several instances where other professional bodies have spent years and, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds developing, you know, professional pathways and this kind of thing, and then they just rust. I mean, nobody uses them.
Yeah.
They don't correspond closely enough with what any individual member actually wants to do. So they're a kind of fine piece of intellectual work, but they've got no real, you know, kind of don't sweat it as well. Don't try to don't invest. Your members will be using new technologies, you know, they'll be taking different approaches, public itself too locked in to one particular model, one particular approach.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I completely agree with you on the don't jump to the tech immediately. Very often it's solutionizing, and it's you don't actually understand what it is you truly need. So how can you possibly, you know, I kind of sort of as you said earlier, you know, Googling and looking for solutions is not the best approach, because at the end of the day, tech can be made to do anything, but if you don't understand what it is you're trying to achieve with your members, you know, there's no point. So I definitely completely agree with you on that. And then one of the other questions that came in, but you know, you've already answered it, but just to cover it, was around, you know, do you think it'll be critical for members to attract new members and to get better retention is the development of an LMS or an online learning platform? But I think, you know, you've covered that already. So, you know, it's not about solutionizing, it's about sort of understanding that integration. So Alastair, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you for persevering. I know that you've been having awful problems with your internet this morning, but that's been really, really useful, really, really beneficial. So thank you very much for that and for joining us this morning. Rebecca, just on your point about the different categories, what we will do is we'll send out the slide deck so you have a note of those 5 different categories that I put up around that. So I'd just like to say thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you so much, Alastair. That has been invaluable, and I think some really, really great learning for the group. And any of the questions that we didn't get to cover off, I'll make sure that we come back on those. So thank you all for joining with us this morning, and we hope to see you again soon at another event.